No one noticed it for nearly a century. The photograph sat in a county archive, catalogued under Domestic Life, 1931. A woman holding her son, her arms wrapped around him protectively, his face half buried against her chest. It looked tender, ordinary, the kind of image historians glance at and move past. But when the image was digitized, when the resolution sharpened and the grain gave way, someone paused, because the boy wasn't holding her back, and his eyes weren't closed. They were open, and they were looking at something behind the camera, something that wasn't supposed to be there. The second photograph was older, much older, a plantation portrait from the late 1800s. A woman posed stiffly in fine clothes. Beside her stood an enslaved figure, hands folded, eyes lowered. The composition was formal, correct, approved, until an expert noticed their hands. They were touching, not accidentally, not loosely, interlocked. Two photographs. Two eras. One feeling, and a secret that refused to stay buried. In 1931, the woman in the photograph was known as Margaret Hale. A widow. Respected. Quiet. She lived in a decaying southern town, where history clung to the walls like damp moss. Her home stood on land that once belonged to a plantation no one liked to talk about. The boy was recorded as her son. No father listed. No birth certificate filed locally. Margaret never explained. People remembered her as devoted. Overprotective. She never let the boy play with others. Never let him attend church. When neighbors waved, she smiled, but always stepped between them and him, as if shielding him or hiding him. The boy's name was Caleb. Those who saw him rarely described him the same way twice. Some said he looked sickly, too pale. Others said he looked old, not aged but worn, like something that had already lived too long. One woman swore his face changed depending on the light. Another claimed his eyes reflected things that weren't there. Margaret never corrected anyone. She only tightened her grip. The plantation portrait surfaced during a separate restoration project decades later. It showed Eleanor Whitcomb, owner of Ashfield Estate, photographed beside an enslaved woman, identified only as Elle. The pose was standard for the time, except for the hands. Experts argued at first. They said it was coincidence, a trick of shadow, but enhanced contrast revealed the truth. Fingers intertwined, palms pressed together, and carved faintly into the skin of both hands was the same mark. A symbol, not decorative, not cultural, deliberate. The archive flagged the image. So did Margaret Hale's photograph, because when a technician zoomed in on Caleb's face, they noticed something impossible. His pupils were dilated far beyond normal, and reflected in them, a woman standing behind the photographer, a woman who did not appear in any record of the shoot, a woman whose face matched Eleanor Whitcomb perfectly. Margaret Hale died quietly in her sleep. Caleb was never found. The house was sealed. Years later, when investigators entered the abandoned property, they found the walls scratched with drawings. Hands, faces, a plantation house sketched again and again, and one sentence, written so deeply into the wood, it cut through the plaster beneath. She promised we would never be forgotten. Historians tried to separate the cases. Different centuries, different families, different contexts, but the symbol matched, the land matched. And when the plantation portrait was compared side by side with the 1931 photograph, one final detail emerged. The woman's hands in both images bore the same scar, in the same place, as if time itself had been holding on. This wasn't a story about affection, it was about inheritance. And whatever Eleanor Whitcomb bound to herself on that plantation had learned how to survive. Through blood, through memory, through photographs, and in 1931, it had learned how to look back. Margaret Hale never spoke about the plantation. That silence alone made people uneasy. Ashfield Estate had been abandoned long before Margaret was born. Fires, sickness, and a string of unexplained deaths turned it into the kind of place parents warned children about. No one owned it officially. The land simply existed, untouched, unwanted, and avoided. Margaret built her home just beyond its boundary, too close. Those who knew local history whispered that she had chosen the spot deliberately. The first time anyone questioned Caleb's nature was during the winter of 1934. A doctor named Samuel Reeves was called to the Hale home after Margaret reported that her son had not slept in 3 days. Reeves expected fever or delirium. What he found disturbed him deeply. Caleb's body temperature was normal. His pulse was steady. His eyes, however, did not blink. Not once. Reeves waved his hand in front of the boy's face. No reaction. He snapped his fingers. Nothing. Then Caleb spoke. "You don't belong here," the boy said calmly. "You weren't invited." Reeves froze. Margaret apologized quickly, claiming her son repeated phrases from books. But Reeves noticed something else. Caleb's shadow didn't match his movements. When the boy turned his head, the shadow lagged, then shifted, reshaping itself slightly before settling again. Reeves left without writing a report. That night, he burned his notes. Margaret knew. She had always known. Her grandmother had told her stories as a child, stories that were never written down. Stories passed only to the women in the family. Stories about Eleanor Whitcomb, not the version recorded in books. The other one, Eleanor Whitcomb, who believed blood was memory. Eleanor Whitcomb, who believed suffering could be organized. Eleanor Whitcomb, who learned that if enough pain was bound to a place, it listened. Eleanor's forbidden bond with the enslaved woman called Elle was never about love. It was about survival. When abolition threatened Ashfield, Eleanor made a promise to the land, to the dead beneath it, to the thing that watched from behind the walls. She would not let them be erased. The ritual took 3 days. No one outside the house lived to describe it. Margaret found Eleanor's journal hidden in a false wall beneath Ashfield's ruined parlor decades later. She was 19. Curious, foolish. The journal did not resist being opened. It welcomed her. The symbol appeared on Margaret's hand that night, burned, permanent. She married soon after. The man died within a year. Margaret was not surprised. Caleb was born 9 months later. He did not cry. He stared. In town, rumors spread. People claimed Caleb never aged, that his face looked the same year after year, that children who stared at him too long grew ill. Margaret stopped letting him outside, but it was already too late, because Caleb did not need to leave the house to see. The house had begun showing him things. At night, Margaret heard him whispering to someone in his room. Not imaginary friends. Names. Old ones. Names that appeared in Eleanor's journal. Names of people buried beneath Ashfield Estate with no markers, no records, no graves. Caleb remembered them, better than Margaret ever could. In 1940, a photographer named Elias Moore requested permission to document rural family life. Margaret refused at first. Then, the symbol on her hand began to ache. She agreed. The photograph was taken in the parlor, light streaming in from the west. Elias framed the shot carefully. Margaret held Caleb close. Too close. Elias noticed it immediately. "This might sound strange," he said, lowering the camera. "But your boy, he feels heavy." Margaret said nothing. Elias took the photo anyway. As the shutter clicked, Caleb looked directly past the lens and smiled. Elias developed the photograph that night. He would later claim the boy's face changed between negatives. In one version, Caleb looked normal. In another, his expression was older, sharper. The smile wrong. In the final print, the one that survives, the eyes were open, watching. Elias tried to destroy the negatives. They would not burn. Margaret buried the journal beneath the house after that. But the land did not forget. Ashfield's shadow crept outward year by year. The boundary blurred. The past bled forward. Caleb began asking questions Margaret had prayed he never would. "When do I get to keep someone?" he asked one evening. Margaret dropped the plate she was holding. "You already have me," she said. Caleb tilted his head. "You won't last," he replied calmly. "None of you do." The night Margaret died, neighbors reported lights moving beneath the earth near Ashfield Estate. The ground sank slightly by the old parlor ruins, and something shifted. By morning, Caleb was gone, but the photograph remained. And every time someone studies it closely, they feel the same thing. Not fear, recognition. As if the boy in the image knows them. As if he's waiting. Ashfield Estate was never meant to be excavated. That was the conclusion reached in 1942, when a brief attempt was made to survey the land after repeated sinkholes appeared near the ruins. The effort lasted 3 days. On the 4th morning, the workers walked away, leaving tools behind, refusing pay. None of them spoke publicly, but one man, an assistant surveyor named Thomas Bell, wrote a letter to his sister before he disappeared. It was found folded inside his Bible. The ground isn't empty. It's layered, not with bodies the way graves are layered, but with moments. Like the land remembers every hand that ever touched it, and it won't let them go. Beneath the parlor ruins, they found a structure no plantation record mentioned. Not a cellar, not a crypt, a chamber. The walls were lined with wood that had darkened unnaturally, warped as if grown rather than built. Symbols were carved into every surface, hundreds of them, each slightly different, each centered around a single shape. A hand, open, palm forward, waiting. At the center of the chamber stood a low stone platform. Its surface was worn smooth, not by time, but by contact. Something had been placed there again and again. Children's footprints were pressed into the hardened soil surrounding it, some bare, some not, all too small. This was where Eleanor Whitcomb completed her work, not a ritual of summoning, a ritual of transfer. Eleanor had discovered something simple and horrifying. Pain did not disappear when bodies did. It soaked into places. And if guided, if organized, it could be inherited. The enslaved woman, known only as Elle, was not Eleanor's accomplice. She was the proof. Their forbidden bond was not affection. It was containment. Eleanor used Elle as an anchor, binding the suffering of the estate into a living body that could remember it. When Elle weakened, Eleanor passed the burden again. Through bloodlines, through women, through children. The boy was never meant to be a person. He was meant to be a vessel. Caleb was not the first. Margaret's grandmother had been the previous one. She lasted 11 years. The one before her lasted 6. They were always boys, always born without fathers, always quiet, always watching. And when the weight became too much, when the vessel began to crack, the land demanded replacement. That was why Caleb had asked his question. When do I get to keep someone? He wasn't asking about love. He was asking about succession. After Margaret's death, the house did not feel empty. Neighbors reported hearing footsteps inside. Laughter, soft, wrong laughter, drifting through open windows at night. The symbol appeared carved into the porch railing, then into trees, then into the dirt road itself. Children in town began drawing it without knowing why. Caleb had not left. He had simply moved deeper. In 1951, a family unknowingly built a small home at the edge of Ashfield's boundary. Their youngest son was born there. By age 3, he spoke names no one taught him. By age 5, he stopped aging. And one morning, his mother found him standing in the yard, palm raised toward the ruins, whispering, "I'm ready." The house burned down that night. The boy was never found. The photograph from 1931 continued to circulate quietly through academic circles. Every time it was restored, enhanced, or printed larger, something changed. Not in the image. In the viewer, people reported the same dream. Standing beneath a plantation house that didn't exist anymore, holding a child whose face they could not see. Feeling something ancient settle into their arms, and hearing a voice say, "You'll do." Ashfield Estate is gone now. The land was purchased, leveled, and paved over. But photographs do not belong to land. They belong to attention, and the boy in the image is no longer waiting to be replaced. He's learned something better. He's learned how to be seen. The photograph should have stayed buried in archives. But in 1978, it was scanned. That was the mistake. The technician assigned to the project was a graduate student named Alan Price. He specialized in restoring damaged glass plate negatives. He had no background in folklore, no knowledge of Ashfield Estate, no idea what he was about to expose. He only noticed that the boy's face behaved strangely under magnification. Not distorted, not blurred, layered. Every time Alan adjusted contrast or depth, another expression surfaced beneath the first. Fear, then calm, then something close to recognition. As if the image was not frozen in time, but stacked. Moments pressed together, all occupying the same space. When he isolated the boy's eyes, the software crashed. Twice. The third time, the screen went black. Then text appeared. Not typed, not generated. Just there. "Keep your hands steady." Alan laughed nervously. Assumed it was a prank. A glitch. Stress. That night, he dreamed of standing in a dark room with wooden walls. A low stone platform before him. Children lined the edges, faces turned away. One of them stepped forward, palm raised. "Hold this," the child said. Alan woke with his right hand numb, fingers locked in the same open position. It took hours before he could close them. Within weeks, the restored image began circulating beyond academia. First among historians, then collectors, then quietly, dangerously, online. Every person who stared at the boy too long reported the same sensations. A pressure in the chest, a heaviness in the arms, a feeling of being chosen. Parents began reporting behavioral changes in their children after viewing the image on television or in print. Night terrors. Drawing the same symbol, an open hand, again and again. Some children began standing still for long periods, staring at corners of rooms, listening. Alan tried to stop it. He contacted universities, publishers, museums, begged them to pull the image. He sent letters describing Ashfield, Eleanor Whitcomb, the chamber beneath the house. No one believed him, until his wife found him one morning in their home office surrounded by printed copies of the photograph, hundreds of them taped to the walls. Every single boy's face was different. Some older, some younger, some smiling, all staring directly at Alan. His right hand was bleeding. He had carved the symbol into his own palm. Before he disappeared, Alan left behind a final recording. His voice was calm, too calm. "They don't need land anymore," he said. "They don't need bloodlines. They don't even need time. The image carries it. The weight. The memory. Every time someone looks closely, they lift a little of it." He paused. "I thought the boy was trapped," he continued. "But that's not it. He was trained." Another pause. He's learning how to pass it forward. In 1989, a daycare center in Baton Rouge was shut down after 4 children stood up at the same moment, raised their hands, and spoke in unison. "We're full," they said. Then they screamed. Doctors found no cause. The children remembered nothing, except one, a boy named Samuel, who asked a nurse a single question before being discharged. "Who holds it now?" The symbol began appearing in places with no connection to Ashfield. Subway walls, school desks, church pews. Always carved, never painted, always the same size, always at child height, and always fresh. The photograph is still online. You've probably seen it. Maybe you didn't zoom in. Maybe you felt uncomfortable and scrolled past. But some people didn't. Some people stared. And when they did, the boy noticed. Because the image is no longer a record. It's a doorway. The first serious attempt to destroy the photograph happened quietly. No press releases. No public statements. Just a fire that wasn't supposed to burn. In 1996, a private collector in New England, one of the first people to purchase an original print, decided the image was dangerous. He wasn't a historian. He wasn't religious. He was a man who hadn't slept properly in 3 years. He claimed the boy had begun appearing in reflections around his house. Not clearly, not fully. Just a suggestion of a face where one should not be. In mirrors after midnight, in the glass of framed certificates, once in the polished blade of a kitchen knife. Always watching, never blinking. The collector loaded the photograph into a steel furnace designed to incinerate medical waste. Temperatures high enough to turn bone into powder. The machine shut down mid-cycle. When technicians opened it, the photograph lay untouched. Not scorched, not warm, but altered. The woman's face, once distant, restrained, now showed strain. Her grip on the boy's shoulder had tightened, fingertips pressing too deep into flesh. And the boy's hand, lower, closer to the viewer, almost reaching. The collector died that night of heart failure. He was 52. His right palm was blackened, as if burned from the inside. After that, the photograph became harder to track. Collectors stopped advertising it. Museums removed it from catalogs without explanation. One institution claimed the negative had quote, though glass plates do not collapse. Privately, a small group formed. Archivists, medical historians, a linguist, a former mortician. They called themselves nothing. Left no paperwork. Communicated through handwritten letters delivered by courier. They believed the photograph wasn't cursed. They believed it was incomplete. One member, an elderly woman who had spent decades studying post-mortem photography, noticed something others missed. The boy's posture. His spine was too straight, too composed. Most dead children in photographs slumped. Even when posed, gravity betrayed them. This boy did not slump. He held himself. She proposed something unthinkable. The boy wasn't dead when the photograph was taken. Records from 1931 supported it. The plantation's physician had certified death, but his signature appeared on multiple documents later proven fraudulent. He had falsified causes before. Covered up injuries. Declared inconvenient people deceased while they still breathed. The woman in the photograph had motive. A son she could not publicly claim. A body she could not safely keep. A ritual she could not complete without witnesses. Post-mortem photography offered cover, stillness, silence, plausible deniability. If the boy had been alive during the exposure, forced to remain still, trained not to breathe, not to blink, not to cry, then the photograph didn't capture death. It captured submission. And something else. Endurance. The group attempted a controlled experiment. They placed a high-resolution copy of the photograph in a locked room with no windows. Cameras recorded continuously. No one entered for 72 hours. At hour 19, the image began to change. Not dramatically. Just enough. The boy's eyes closed. At hour 42, they opened again. At hour 61, the hand lifted. Not fully. Just a few millimeters. Enough to cast a new shadow. When the group entered the room, the air smelled of damp soil, and the symbol, carved into the table beneath the photograph, was fresh. They understood then. The photograph was not passive. It responded. To attention. To belief. To fear. Every attempt to destroy it strengthened it. Every reproduction multiplied it. Every viewer became a participant. And the boy was no longer contained within the frame. The final attempt was not destruction. It was replacement. They theorized that if the photograph was a vessel, it could be sealed, filled, by completing what Eleanor Whitcomb had begun and failed to finish. A ritual of holding, of transfer, of weight. Someone would need to take the boy's place. Someone willing. Someone unnoticed. Someone already half forgotten. They chose a man from the group. A quiet one. No family. No records past the age of 12. Hands already scarred. They recreated the room. The lighting. The pose. The grip. They took the photograph. And for a moment, just a moment, the original image went still, peaceful. Then the cameras failed. When power returned, the new photograph showed only one figure. A man seated alone. Eyes open, hand raised. Waiting. The original image was gone. Not destroyed, not burned. Just empty. A blank plate. The group disbanded. Swore never to speak of it again. But they made one mistake. They archived the new photograph. And images, once made, never truly disappear. Somewhere, right now, someone is looking at it for the first time. They feel the pressure, the heaviness, the sense of being chosen, and the hand. The hand is lifting again. The photograph resurfaced in 2014, not in a museum, not in a private collection. On a forgotten genealogy forum, a user uploaded it with a simple caption. Found this in my grandmother's things. No idea who it is. Anyone recognize the family? The image was different. No plantation backdrop. No elegant woman. No child. Just a single figure seated against darkness. A man, middle-aged. Rigid posture. Eyes wide open. Not pleading, not afraid. Waiting. What drew attention wasn't his face. It was his hand. Raised halfway, palm forward, fingers bent slightly inward, as if inviting someone closer. As if asking to be held. Within hours, the forum thread exploded. People reported headaches, nosebleeds, a pressure in the chest while viewing the image. One user commented that the man's eyes weren't the same color in every screenshot. Another noticed faint fingerprints forming on their phone screen after zooming in. The original poster deleted their account that same night, but the image had already spread. Experts who later examined the file metadata found something impossible. The photograph contained no camera origin, no lens data, no exposure record, no development trace. It wasn't scanned. It wasn't photographed. It simply existed. And layered beneath the visible image, hidden in compression artifacts, was something older. The outline of a child, small, compressed, as if folded inside the man's chest. Those who studied post-mortem traditions recognized the truth too late. The ritual had succeeded, but not as intended. The boy had not been replaced. He had grown. He learned patience. He learned weight. He learned how long humans stare at things they don't understand. The photograph was never a prison. It was a school. Each viewer taught him something. Fear, guilt, recognition, and when the final vessel was ready, the image let go of the past. No more plantation. No more mother. No more disguise. Just a form that could hold him. Disappearances followed. Quiet ones, a night security guard who spent hours watching the image on a loop, a grad student who wrote her thesis on anomalous photography, a man who printed the photograph and framed it above his bed. In every case, the same detail appeared in police reports. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, no note, only a strange indentation on furniture, as if someone had been sitting there for a very long time, waiting. The last confirmed sighting of the photograph came from a storage facility fire in Illinois. Everything burned, everything except one metal cabinet. Inside it, a single printed photograph. The man's eyes were closed now, his hand lowered, peaceful, complete. But in the reflective surface of the photo, something stood behind the viewer. Something small, something watching. Some images don't record history. They continue it. If you ever find an old photograph that makes you feel heavier the longer you stare, if the faces seem aware of you, if a hand looks like it's almost moving, do not share it. Do not study it. Do not try to understand it, because some secrets were never meant to stay buried, and some children never stop growing. Forgotten remains.